Ancient cooking pots that preserve food better than modern stoves. If you've ever wondered why our ancestors could keep food warm, safe and delicious for hours without electricity, the answer isn't magic. It's engineering. Ancient engineering. The kind of survival wisdom that still humbles modern technology. And what's wild is that some of these old cooking pots don't just compete with our stoves today, they outperform them. They were crafted for a world without convenience, where food had to last, fuel was precious, and survival depended on efficiency. That's the kind of legacy we dive into here on Legacy of Survival. So, buckle in. Because once you understand how these ancient pots could preserve food better than the sleek appliances in your kitchen, you'll never look at cooking the same way again. Let's start with one of the most underestimated pieces of ancient survival gear: simple clay pots. Now, don't let the simplicity fool you. Clay pots were engineered with porous surfaces that could literally create cooling through evaporation. When water seeped through the tiny pores and evaporated off the surface, the temperature inside the pot dropped. This natural cooling effect kept food fresher for longer. It's the same principle behind early desert refrigeration systems: cool without ice, electricity, or chemicals. And when these clay pots were buried halfway underground or covered with cloth soaked in water, the cooling became even more intense. People could keep stews warm for hours, but the food wouldn't spoil quickly because the pot breathed. Modern metal pots? Zero breathability. They trap heat, moisture and bacteria much faster once the flame dies. Clay pots also preserved nutrients better because they cooked at low, stable temperatures. There was no harsh boiling, no nutrient breakdown, just slow, controlled cooking. Something modern stoves try to imitate with low simmer settings, but honestly rarely achieve with the same consistency. Stone cookware was the heavyweight champion of heat retention. These thick carved stone pots stayed hot long after the fire burned out. You could remove them from glowing coals and hours later still find your food gently simmering inside. That kind of thermal mass comes only from natural stone, something metal, steel or aluminum just can't replicate. Stone cookware was so effective that families during tough eras, including the conditions surrounding World War II, still relied on stone-like heavy pots to stretch heating fuel. One fire in the morning, one pot of food, and it would stay warm nearly the entire day. That meant less fuel, less labour, and more preserved food. Imagine cooking breakfast and finding it warm in the evening without ever reheating. That's not nostalgia. That's physics. The dense structure of stone also protected food from temperature swings, which reduced bacterial growth. It acted like a natural slow cooker, preserving both flavour and safety. If you've ever eaten something cooked in stone, you know the difference. It tastes like time itself was slow roasted into the meal. While cast iron is still around today, its roots go back centuries, and much of its survival value has been forgotten. Cast iron pots weren't just durable. They created a semi-sealed environment where heat was distributed so evenly that food stayed safe far longer than in thin modern cookware. Add the weight of those lids, and you had mini pressure systems that trapped steam, slowed down spoilage, and kept food warm for astonishing amounts of time. People in cold regions could cook a pot of stew, leave it by a residual heat source, and find it safe and edible well into the next day. In survival terms, cast iron is, well, legendary. It resists bacteria better than many modern coatings, lasts for generations, and, becomes naturally non-stick with use. And unlike modern pans, with chemical coatings that wear off, cast iron actually gets better over time. A well-seasoned pot was one of the most valued household items long before modern ovens existed. Before your gas or electric stove could crank up the heat, ancient communities were using earthen ovens that performed like self-contained heat vaults. These weren't just ovens, they were long-term food preservation systems. Earthen ovens were made by insulating a chamber with dirt, clay and stone that stored thermal energy. Once heated, they held stable temperatures for an astonishing length of time. You could cook a meal, leave it inside, and hours later the food would still be warm, moist, and safe. Less fuel, more result. Some cultures even used these ovens to slow cook entire meals overnight. And because the ovens cooled gradually, bacteria had little chance to grow. Modern stoves turn off instantly. The moment the flame dies, the temperature drops and food enters the danger zone. Earthen ovens? They descend slowly, like nature intended, preserving food the entire way down. Copper cookware holds a special place in ancient kitchens, not just because it looks beautiful, but because copper itself has antimicrobial properties. Yes, this metal actively kills bacteria. So when ancient people stored stews or liquids in copper pots, they weren't just preserving flavour, they were fighting contamination naturally. Copper transfers heat incredibly fast, which means the moment a pot was taken off the fire, the temperature dropped into a safe simmer rather than creating hotspots where bacteria could flourish. It cooked evenly, cooled evenly, and prevented microbial growth far better than many modern pots. It's no surprise copper cookware has survived across civilizations. And, while modern stoves try to optimize heat control, ancient copper pots simply did it better. Here's something people forget. Ancient cookware wasn't just about the pot. The lid played a massive role. Ancient pots used thick, heavy lids, clay, stone or iron, that sealed in moisture and acted as thermal blankets. These lids prevented heat escape and created a micro-environment that modern thin metal lids just can't imitate. This natural insulation preserved food texture, heat and safety without reheating. Even without thermometers, people understood something modern kitchens often ignore. Heat consistency is food preservation. That's why, a pot of stew in an ancient clay cooker stayed good longer than the same stew in a stainless steel pot today. Modern stoves give instant heat, but they also give instant cooling. Once the burner is off, the pot cools quickly. That fast drop puts food right into the bacterial danger window. And because modern pots are thin, metal and non-porous, they don't regulate heat or moisture naturally. Ancient pots, on the other hand, were part stove, part storage, part slow cooker. They stabilized temperature, they breathed, they insulated, they even killed bacteria. Modern gear focuses on speed, not preservation. And in survival, speed is secondary to reliability. Ancient people didn't rely on electricity. They relied on physics. And they built pots that made food last longer because food had to last longer. Their cookware reflects that reality. Whether you're into survival history or just want your food to actually taste better, ancient cooking pots hold lessons modern kitchens forgot. They weren't just tools, they were survival systems. And they remind us that sometimes the oldest methods deliver the strongest results. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the ancient wisdom that outperforms modern technology, make sure you hit that subscribe button, drop a comment, and share this video to keep the legacy of survival growing. Your support keeps these forgotten skills alive.